When someone is looking for a Christian school near them, they normally have three questions. Number one, does your school's academics compare or are they better than other schools' academics? Number two, what extracurriculars do you offer, such as fine arts, student life, and honestly, I mean, not most importantly, but some parents, most importantly, athletics. And number three, how much does your school cost? And quite often, that third question may be a reason why a parent chooses to not ask any more information about your school and to go look at other options. And in response to that, what do we normally do with our Christian school websites? We do things like we create like a whole either downloadable or a section of our website that says, how can you afford our Christian education, with different steps along the way? What different tuition packages do you offer? And also, what benefits does it having a private Christian education offer? Because if you can help people offset the cost with a great ROI, you can be sure to make sure that students understand the value of a private school education, the value of a Christian education for that matter, and ultimately how they can afford the sacrifice it takes to send their kid to your school. But here's a fun question. Have you ever thought about hiding your school's tuition on your website? You know, I had a school recently decide that they wanted to try this out and experiment with this idea of putting their tuition numbers behind an email sign up. And we'll talk about their results and how that worked over here over the last few months in just a little bit. But you might be thinking, why would I want to do that? When people are asking how much does our school cost, why would I want to keep those numbers from them? And would that actually make them more frustrated, or will people not respond, or will they think that, you know what, they're just too bougie for me? If they're not going to say what their numbers are, I'm not even going to try it. So before we jump into the results and does it work for their school and can it work for your school, here's a few reasons why you might actually want to hide your school's tuition numbers. Number one is you'll be actually able to follow up with these people who request tuition information for you. Another idea might be your school's already kind of full, and rather than just having the tire kickers get more and more information, you only want real viable families who are potentially interested in your school to request more information. And rather than people who just jump to the price tag really, really quick, this gives you a great opportunity to explain the benefits of a private education, the differences between maybe your Christian education model and other Christian education models, but it lets you set the stage for the value of your school before people even have a chance to look at the number. So that way, by the time they look at the number, they're probably already convinced that they need to send their kid to some sort of private education. But is this idea for everyone? And honestly, I'm not fully convinced, because as a lot of people are trying to find information about your school, they want to have all the information in front of them at their disposal to make a decision. But that being said, it might be a good idea for you to just maybe give this a shot for a few months to see if people actually do respond well to requesting your tuition rate information. So if you are going to do this, if you want to try this experiment out, what steps do you need to take on your website to make this happen? Number one is you first have to separate your two tuition pages. You have to have your standard tuition pages where you put this all on one page, where you have your tuition, rates, and financial aid all on one page. That's the easiest way to do it. And then you have to create a secondary page where you actually hide all of the actual tuition numbers. Number two, on that first page, you now need to put a contact form where people put in their name and their email address. So that way, when they submit the information, they are able to then have a little message that appears right there on the screen that says, "Thank you for requesting our tuition information. We are in the process of emailing that to you right now. But click here if you would like to view those rates now." And then inside of that little click here button, that will take you a link to that new page where people are actually able to view those tuition numbers. Now, if you are able to do this, I know this is very simple to do inside of a lot of website builders, but you want to make sure you do one little extra little thing for SEO, which is hide the actual tuition numbers from Google. You could do that, or if you decide not to, that's okay. Just know that people can still find those tuition numbers based on different searches, or ChatGPT can pull those numbers in as well because they are a public-facing page. But if you tell Google and other things inside your website, do not index this page. This is normally done on the back end for like WordPress websites that I build inside of the plugin software. If you're on Squarespace or Wix, normally in the page setting it says somewhere, but you say do not index the actual tuition page, so that way it doesn't get tracked or crawled or anything like that. But needless to say, you have to make sure you have that contact form. You have that little button that says click here, and then it takes people off to that new page. Then you also have to make sure that email automatically gets sent out, where that email just says, hey, thank you so much for requesting the tuition statement. Click here to go to that tuition page, because let's be honest, that page, rather than saying here's the exact numbers inside of that email, it's always better to say review the tuition numbers here. Or you could say just very standard, like, hey, here's just the very quick bullet points of tuition for kindergarten, elementary, and high school. To view the full tuition table and fees associated with enrollment, click here to view the full table, which then takes them off to that new page. And then the biggest thing, and this is where I think that this idea can fall short, is you have to make sure you consistently and constantly follow up with these folks. Because here's the deal, all right? So they just gave you permission to reach back out to them. They said, hey, here's my name, here's my email, and it's always good to include a little checkbox of, yes, you can contact me with further communications from your school. They just gave you permission to contact you. A lot of times when people are just looking at tuition numbers, we have no idea who they are. They're just on our website, they're gathering the information, and then if they like what they see, then they go and request more information about your school. Or they might just have a whole bunch of stuff written down, and then they're gonna decide based on what they see and what they hear and what they experience based on what they wrote down, and they may never reach out to you at all. If you do this tuition request form, you have their email, you have their information. Now it's time to actually follow up with them manually via email, or, and we'll talk about this in future videos, how you can automate all of these email sequences. So that way now you have an opportunity to not just say, hey, thanks for requesting our, tuition numbers, and that's it. You can now talk about the value of Christian education. You can talk about stories from alumni. You can talk about different stories from actual students. So that way you can actually hit up these people's inboxes consistently, not like spammy, you don't want to do that, but consistently in such a way where you are keeping your school top of mind and setting up a position for your school where people are like, we like what we have read, we like what we see, let's go and experience it for ourselves. So this is a great idea. It's a great opportunity where if you hide your tuition rate numbers, you're collecting people's information, you're now able to follow up with them and communicate to them in a way that you never had before. So here's the question, all right? Does this work? I have their stats pulled up right here. You're not going to see it on the video, but I have their stats pulled up right here. And so we started this campaign a little over 2 months ago. And so on their page, rather than just putting like a form, we actually have a button that says click here to access the tuition numbers. So it's more of like a, not a password protected situation, but more of a exclusive idea. And so click here to actually view it. They click that button, and then from there a pop-up shows up, they put in their information, and then it takes them off to that next page. In the last 2.5 months, they have had 122 people request to view those tuition numbers, which is insane. This is 122 people that may have never reached out to them at all about getting tuition information. So this is 122 people who requested to view their tuition information, and now their office is able to consistently put them into a very specific email grouping so they can email those folks about open houses, about meeting with the school principal / headmaster, and also just learn more about the school. So and before you think this will never work for my school, we're not a large school. We don't have thousands of people. We don't have people knocking at our doors to get in. This is a normal size school. This school fluctuates between 250 to 300 students outside of the Atlanta metro area. They're not a large school, but they are a terrific school. And so if this can work for them, maybe this can work for you as well. So again, if you want to try this out where you're hiding your tuition numbers, you have to make sure that you actually have a follow-up process in place, that it works well, and that it gets people the information that they need in the timely manner so they're not just waiting. Because the last thing you want to do is have someone request it, and then 3 days later, your office admin goes in and then sends them an email. You want to automate everything as much as humanly possible. So could this work for your school? It really could. I'm even tempted to try this on more school websites because if it worked for them, it might be able to work for your school as well. But if your website is in a place where it's not even set up well, it doesn't show up well online, it doesn't show up well in ChatGPT, it doesn't give a good first impression for your school, and hey, maybe you're not even sure if it's even being successful online in any shape, way, or form, I encourage you to go to christianschoolwebsites.com where you can learn more information about how we can build a Christian school website for you for way less than half of what you're even charging for tuition. On that website, you can view the ROI calculator to see what the ROI is of actually investing in a Christian school website for your school. For if you get one student in and they're with you for the entire 12 years, the duration of their education. So make sure you go to christianschoolwebsite.com, fill out that contact form or schedule a call with me, and we can hop on a phone, hop on a video call to talk more about how we can get your school to show up well online and ultimately turn those online visitors into enrolled families.